Frenchie, hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
To the podcast. I am usually doing this alongside of my cohort Kyle over here, but
Am I the first guest?
We're flying solo today. Sadly, you are not the
Oh,
first
no,
guest.
no, that's okay.
We've had multiple guests, but you are the first guest who is mainly an Upper East Side client.
Oh, look at that.
And that is exciting.
Was I your first Upper East Side client? I'm trying to be the first somewhere because I'm never the first on the leaderboard.
I tell you're climbing up. You're going to be number one with a bullet soon. I don't think you were first, but you were close.
Yeah.
You were like one of the first people I spoke to.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the reason that I wanted to get you on the podcast is because I feel like we're underrepresented in our Upper East Side clients on the podcast. And two, I wanted you to kind of talk about what it's like to train up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
All right.
tell me
What's it
everything.
like to train up there?
Yeah, what's it like to train on the
It's
US,
good.
what we call the tree house, by the way. Each gym has a
his
nickname.
name.
That
Tree
one
house
is called
good.
the tree house. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so you know this, but I used to go to fitting room up there all the time, right?
Right.
And that was when I lived in the 90s and all this. And then I moved to 73rd Street. And literally the day I moved to 73rd Street, the fitting room up there closed down. And I was like,
Right.
what the heck?
You thought it was you.
Well, that's a stretch. But I was just like, I want that space to do something for me because
Right.
it's very convenient for me.
Right.
And so I think I saw Liz Dean post about the fort.
Who you worked with, right?
Who I worked with at the wing. And so she posted about the fort and I was like, what is that? And at the time your Instagram didn't say much. And I was like, I have no clue, but it says Upper East Side coming soon. And so that's when I just started exploring. I was like, I feel like I could like that. I think she posted like a lifting picture.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of how it all began. And I've always been like I'm trying to find a more elegant way to say this because I call it like a gym, like studio whore, but I don't think that's really nice to myself. So like a studio hopper.
Yeah. A studio enthusiast.
A studio enthusiast along the way. But, I've gone through phases of different types of interest in workouts. But aside from that, I have often felt a little bit like not at home, right? Like I go, I do the thing, I see the same people every time I go. None of them talk to each other or none of them talk to me. And I'm like, this feels weird. Like, I just want to be able to also enjoy the social aspect kind of.
Right.
And so I remember like my first class I walked in and like Corey's just like standing by the app pad and he's like, Frenchie? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what? Like, why do you know who I am? Like, why do you know my,
Right.
And so that just kind of started it. And now I just love it. I mean, I'm like, I don't really have great things. I'm like, I don't have specific things to say. It's not like I'm like, the ski is really the thing. But I feel like it's just been, I haven't always been like a very competitive person with myself, like, or felt that drive to push myself athletically.
Right.
But now I do, and it's fun. I get excited, when
Yeah.
I'm like, when was it? Well, this week I had a win and a loss. One day I managed to get more cals on the ski than I did week one, and that was awesome, right? And I was like, fuck yeah, I did it. And then I also didn't, I didn't beat last time on when I went from the ski to the rower, and I was like, damn it. But all in good fun, kind of, you know what I mean? It's not like this big moment of me feeling like I'm coming down on myself. Rather, it is like motivating to feel connected to those outcomes and to actually see the measurable growth that I've experienced since I started.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I always found, or when we started the gym, like things that we were trying to like push forward in the industry was one, people train together, but it wasn't a community.
Yeah.
Which like, I was like, it's so much fun to have like training partners and having them be in it with you and talk trash with them sometimes and whatever the case may be. And then the other thing was like all the workouts just felt separate from each other.
Yeah.
Like it was like, oh, you did this. And then you come in next time and it's just like starting over.
Yeah.
And like having a little bit of like some accountability to yourself and see what you've done in the past and something similar and have some targets to shoot for.
Yeah.
So those like the community aspect for sure is like, I think our proudest moment.
Yeah.
Just because we've been lucky to have like a community of really lovely people. So like that's kind of number one. But this system of like, we're going to keep track of what you do. you're going to touch those things again and it's going to be meaningful to you.
Right.
I think it adds a lot of it, you know?
I think it does. I mean, I think, you know, even those moments when like someone like Kristen, right, who I see a lot on the Upper East Side, and she's like, look, Frenchie with the big girl plates, you know, when I get like the 10s on there and it's fun, you know, it's exciting. And I think everyone's like in a place of cheering each other on more than like even judging what the number is, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing that I always find really interesting about community is that I love that word and I hate that word. Like I love the reality of it and I hate when it gets overblown and marketed, right? Because most of the time it's total bullshit. And I was the head of community at the Wing for 2.5 years, which is why I feel I can say that confidently.
Fair enough. It cuts close.
Yeah. But the thing is that communities emerge, right? They're not necessarily like constructed. And I think that like what you guys have done is a real testament to that, of like you bringing your whole selves to the room, really, I'm assuming training your coaches in a certain way with like a certain approach of doing things. And I think those are kind of the foundations and the norms that you need in place to build a thriving community, because then each person adapts to kind of those norms and values that you set. But if you just go into it thinking like, we're going to build this like awesome community of people, and you try to commodify something that's really like an emotional interpersonal experience, I feel like that's where it gets messy.
Sure. It can be used as a marketing term.
Yeah.
Yeah. For us, it was a little bit more of like just a value. And I think it did happen a little organically in that, you know, we love doing this stuff ourselves. So we just surrounded ourselves with other people who did it. And when you're suffering and struggling alongside other people, you do bond with them. Yeah. Like that does happen.
Yeah.
So that happens. And then I think people want to be a part of that, particularly now because it's more and more difficult to actually be in person with people and feel a connection to them.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've randomly after class been walking in the same direction as someone who was in my class with me, and we just like, you know, walk 3 blocks together and chat, right? That never has happened to me anywhere else. Just one of those things, like we're just walking in the same direction. And I think the intimacy of the classes helps with that. I also think, right, like so many of the studio classes that I did in the past was all about like working as hard as possible for every minute of the class. And the fort is really hard work, but because we're lifting and all that, we also just have more like breaks sometimes in between things. And so you get that moment to just like tell someone good job or be like, hey, by the way, you know, if you've seen them again. And so I think that also helps, right? Is that you have those pauses to connect.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of group fitness places broker on fatigue.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing, because people will be like, well, I'm tired, so I must have trained hard,
right?
Which is not exactly what training is.
Right.
I can go off on a 20-minute tangent on this. I will not.
I won't let you do that. I won't let you go there again.
but yeah, I mean, you know, true. Like, you know, we do value strength training quite a bit, and good strength training requires rest periods. So you get to get a minute and connect with other people, and it is nice.
Yeah.
It's a really good environment for that. I also think the size of the group helps.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not much of a runner, but a few of my colleagues are running enthusiasts. So I went to a running class a couple of times. And for me to get through like 45 minutes of running was like a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
So at the end, I wanted to like turn around to my fellow runners and like get some high fives or some like, hey, we did it. And people were like out the door. Like, I was like, oh man, this is unique.
Right. Well, I feel like in New York in particular, although I do think it's probably even more of a New York thing, like working out feels like a task to check off the list rather than like part of the fabric of your life. And I feel like now it's like I look forward to coming to class. I'm like, who am I going to see today? And I think that is really different, right? It does kind of go into more of that, like, this is part of the fabric of my day to day. This is like woven into my social life. And I think that is different than places where you're just like, got my workout in, done now, like coffee, whatever.
Right.
Like,
right. What's
off
next?
To the office.
Right. Right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Did you ever do, I know you said you were a kind of a studio enthusiast. Had you ever done like kind of like real weight training, or was it more like kind of cardio HIIT type stuff?
So, gosh, I mean, I've done everything. I went through a phase, like a 6-year phase, where I did a lot of SLT or megaformer classes. Sorry. which I loved. I mean, I think I'd taken like over 500 classes. Like I did a lot. And it was great. I liked it. You know, I really liked it at the time. I did it a lot before I got married and I looked super toned.
Like, sure. 500 classes, it will do that.
It will do that. Yeah. But I also didn't ever feel like I was getting measurably stronger.
Sure.
Right? Like I have a 1.5-year-old who weighs 34 pounds.
Oh boy.
And a 3.5-year-old who weighs 41 pounds.
Okay.
And since I have started, have noticed, right, like my ability to carry my children has changed, which ultimately, I mean, I'm like, I was about to say that's more important to me. I still care about how I look quite a bit. But
right. You could do, it's
TBH,
both.
it's both, right? Yeah. I was like 50% vanity, 50% sanity. It's like probably my balance.
That's about right. I think you're nailing it.
So anyways, I had done CrossFit at some point. I feel like in my mid-20s, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get strong. I'm going to do CrossFit. Anyways, I think there were 2 separate occasions where I cried and I was like, fuck this. This is not for me. Like, I just, no. Like, okay. And once was just because like the barbell fell on me, but I was just like so tired by like not having any clue what to do. Right. And I think the other was like trying to do a box jump onto a wooden box and then just like nailing my shin on it and just.
It's a classic.
I was like, you know what? This is not for me. Like, I'm not here for the bruises.
Right. Do you still have scars from that one or no?
No.
Oh, good for you.
But like, and then, you know, I would see people climbing the rope and I was just like, do I really, like, that's cool. But is that something that I really feel like I need to accomplish in my life? Right. Maybe one day. I don't know. And so I think that was sort of, I always knew that strength training was good, right? But then I was also always in my 20s where I was like, I just need to burn fat, right? Where like, now I know, build muscle and have your muscle do the work for you. But essentially.
Yeah. Muscle is definitely underappreciated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was kind of the journey. And I think I always felt similarly to others that we kind of mentioned, like the need for it to be like fast, nonstop, intense, sweaty, all those things rather than actually thinking about the kind of mechanics and overall impact of it.
Yeah. I think we've always seen, as part of the reason we do these podcasts, part of the reason we do like kind of any of our content is we don't really want, I mean, we're happy to talk about our gym because we love it and we're fired up about it, but really it's amazing to me with all the information out there, like how much people still need to be educated about training and like what good training is.
Right.
And how, you know, for most people, you know, it needs to be a little bit more of a well-rounded approach, like just cardio and calorie burn. And if that's what you're focused on, you're probably missing a lot of it.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think it's interesting because I feel like there's a little bit of like a myth around, especially for women, especially maybe in New York, I don't know, but this feeling of like strength training will make me bulky. Yeah. And like, I want to be thin. I'm like, I don't think the two are necessary. Yeah. You have to strength train a lot and like consume a lot of protein to bulk up that much.
Right. My favorite thing is, you know, we do a lot of the sales calls or the initial client outreach. Yeah. And a lot of people will say that. They'll be like, yeah, I know I need to get stronger and I know I need to add or maintain muscle mass. And then they'll look me dead in the eye. They'll be like, but I don't want to look like you. And it's like, well, 1, I don't think that'll happen. And 2, that's a mean thing to say to somebody.
You're like, you have no idea how hard I work to look like this. Yeah. So it's never going to happen for you. Don't worry.
It's like, I'm a person. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm super happy that you found a home up there.
Yeah. And I literally tell everyone about it.
Yeah, that also helps.
You should come. Because I think people are missing out, right? I think people are missing out. Like, I've made enormous progress since I started. I ran a half marathon this year. I'm not a runner. I've always hated running. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is like TMI perhaps, but I stopped breastfeeding my second kid. And I was like, I just need to feel like my body is mine again. I just need to like regain this feeling of physical autonomy. And I was like, I feel like I should run because I'll get outside and I won't hear any babies or anything. So I went to run and I was like, well, still don't love running, but here we go. And, you know, I have to train for something if I'm going to keep it up. So I started training with Jess. And the thing that I immediately noticed was that running was just easier than it ever had been because I was stronger, right? And I was like more aware about how I could recruit the strength that I had and that I was building to use it to run. Now, I'm the slowest runner ever. So, that's neither here nor there. But I ran the whole marathon, the whole half, right? I didn't have to stop or anything like that. I was fine because I had trained, but also I felt like I was, ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just trained me for a high rocks competition. Not nearly as far as a half marathon, but this is like running interspersed with like basically fort type things. And I had not run in 20 years. I'm not built to run. I don't enjoy it. So I still struggle with it, and I would not label myself a runner per se, but if you persist at it, it does get better. And I did, kind of the first thing that you said, although for me, it's not about babies because my son's a little bit older, but the solitude of it is lovely.
Yes. I know. After we've been talking about community, we're like, but have you ever been alone in the park running?
I think you need both. And if you have children, that solitude is hard to come by, particularly if you're a mom, because you're always doing it.
Totally. Totally. And when you've been like a mom who's been like pregnant and or breastfeeding for 4 years straight, you're like, oh, cool. This physical being that I embody is mine.
Yeah. Now, someone told me recently, and this, you could tell me if this is true or if this is a rumor, that training at the fort and not interrupting that is affecting your decision on whether to have another child.
A little birdie told you.
Yeah, a little birdie.
Okay. I mean, I just thought about it. I don't want to say, I can't, I really don't want to give you that responsibility, to be fair, if I want to have another child or not. But as I thought about it, part of me has been like, I've gotten so much stronger at the fort, and I'm going to need to accept, just regressing to build up again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's probably okay.
Yeah. Right. What would be interesting, though, if you decide to move forward with it is we've had many moms and expecting moms train with us. Yeah. Really, a lot of times, kind of right up to the delivery.
Yeah.
We had one woman, she was bench pressing the day that she gave birth, which was amazing.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do report that their pregnancy and their delivery and their recovery is really affected by the training in a positive way.
Yeah. So I can't speak to the fort, but I can speak to my other pregnancies. My second one was very COVID, so I was doing a lot of home workouts, which were less effective, but I stayed really active throughout, and it did make it all easier because you just kind of slowly get used to carrying the weight on your body, and it all kind of comes together rather than this feeling of I'm pregnant, I should not move,
Right.
And then one day you try to stand up and you're like, wow, I weigh 30 pounds
more.
I
can't move.
I can't move. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. And yeah, I think that you can keep going. I just think it's probably at some point you have to make some trade-offs along the way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it doesn't.
I don't think it's when you get to your personal records, I don't think are when you're
probably
pregnant.
Not the goal at that time.
But yes, that is very funny. And that is fact, not fiction, that I did say that. I was like, just, it's one of those things where you start to think about your quality of life overall. And you're like, what is one thing that's really contributing to my quality of life right now?
Right.
And I'm like, working out at the fort is contributing to my quality of life right now. And do I want to, disrupt that along with the other huge quality of life disruption, which is a baby.
Right. Well, the fact that you have 2 small children, the fact that you just said your husband is opening a second restaurant in a different city, and the fact that you run a successful business, which is kind of what I want to talk about next, is that, you so eloquently talk about community. And before we pressed the record button, we were talking about email marketing. But you work for, or you have your own business where you help small businesses, startups with kind of marketing and strategy and maximizing kind of their productivity and their top line, revenue. Tell me a little bit about that. When did that start? How did you get into it?
So it started in the fall of 2020. It was one of those weird things where I'm like, was it accidental? I don't really know exactly. Mm-hmm. I had always wanted to start my own business, and I'd been working in startups for 10-ish years. And I got to the point where I was like, if I am kind of, frustrated by my bosses so easily, at a certain point in time, I'm the problem, right? If it's been like this in every job, that probably means that I shouldn't have a boss. And if I'm going to get frustrated with anyone, it should be me, right? So I always had this feeling that I would start my own business. And I actually thought I was going to be a founder, a VC-backed founder, but I was always waiting for my $1 million idea to appear. I had a lot of potential $1 million ideas, but nothing was like, I'm ready to go for this. And I was working at The Wing, which was a women's membership club that was all over the country. I grew it from 4 locations to 11 locations, 3,000 members to 12,000 members. And my friend said this week when she was introducing me to someone. She's like, Frenchie was in a disastrously senior position at The Wing, which I think was said very well, because while I was part of the growth, when things turned at The Wing during 2020 across like between COVID and also just like all the social justice issues that were coming up after George Floyd was murdered and all that, things really tanked for the business. And I got to this point where there was so much like there was so much infighting with the organization. And I was like, I don't think that I can just go work somewhere else and start to like find new norms, manage a new team, all of that. I was like, I feel like I need to just do something that is not that. And I also realized that while it's great to have investors when you want to build something, the pressure from VC investors is enormous and has like a huge, potentially negative impact on the team, right? On the culture. Sure. Because now I'm always telling people, I'm like, community does not grow on a VC timeline, right? But if the VCs want the community to grow on the VC timeline, then you're just kind of hustling to make something happen, even though it's not what I would call a community. So anyways, all that happened. And then I don't know if I had a dream. Like, I have no idea exactly what happened. All I know is that one morning I woke up and I started telling everyone that I was starting a business.
Okay. That's good. That's a good first step.
Yeah. And I made an Instagram and I started, working on my own logo, and I built a website, and I was just like, I've been building businesses for 10 years. I can capitalize on my own intellectual property experience, et cetera. And so I kind of just started doing it, and I started writing to a list of 5 people, and I started posting content on Instagram. And I just like, I've never really been one of those people like fake it till you make it type of people, but I really just like acted like my business was real from the first moment I started working on it. And I feel like that was foundational. And there was another piece, which was like, I gave myself 6 months when I started. It's like, I'll give myself 6 months. We'll see how this goes. And then I'll look for a job if I need to. After 6 months, I was like, oh, let's try another 6 months. And then I had a baby and and I just kept going. And so that was kind of the genesis of it all. And now it's been 2.5 years. I've worked with like dozens and dozens of clients. And my real goal is, technically, I guess I fall into like that business coach category. I don't call myself a coach for so many reasons, including I'm just too bossy to be a coach. I'm much more like, this is what you should do. Right. I'm like, you can bring the internal exploration elsewhere. Not that I'm against it. I think you should do it, but that's not me.
Yeah, work with your therapist.
Yeah, exactly. Work with your therapist, go to a life coach, like whatever works for you. But like, I'm just going to be like, this is the best practice for this particular scenario. And so, I think what I really started to see as the missing piece for most business owners is that there are so many people who are so good at what they do, but the actual strategic operational like design of the business isn't usually super intentional at the outset, right? And so I worked with people who are, let's say, parenting coaches, and they kind of just started because they were helping someone. Let's say they're a sleep coach, right? Like a pediatric sleep coach. They were helping their friend because they happened to just know a lot about baby sleep, and then they realized they knew a lot about it, and so then their friend told their friend about that. You know what I mean? Like word of mouth, it grew. Sure. And then suddenly they're like, I'm like trading time for money, and I'm like, now what? Right? How do I make this thing real or more real? And so that's kind of where I come in, because it's funny. The online business world that I'm a part of is so weird in its own ways.
I'm sure.
And I didn't realize it. And I just assumed that, it would be like less politics than corporate or anything like that. But ultimately what I saw was like, people were packaging all sorts of different like skills and products, but no one was like, hey, business owners, I can help you take a step back and learn how to think about your business, learn how to make the difficult decisions in your business, learn how to actually build out like a strategic plan, learn how to, before we even start thinking specifically about the marketing, learn to really understand, what does your audience need from you? Where is your audience? I mean, one really specific example is like, everyone's like, we need to be on Instagram. And I'm like, do you? They're like, but everyone's on Instagram. I'm like, well, are your people on Instagram, right? And I've met people who are trying to go all in on Instagram. I'm like, your people are on Facebook, right? Let's just say they're different generation or different whatever. Or their people are on LinkedIn. And so I think it's just really helping people be more proactive than reactive.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
I could talk about it forever. I could just blabber on, but
that's what we're here for. Kyle and I worked with, I think this is like a lot of small businesses start in the same way that you just mentioned, which is like, you're very passionate about the product.
Yeah.
And then you have no idea how to like operate.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, I have this great product. I'm all in on the product. Well, it's very hard to have a business if you don't know how to operate the business.
Yeah.
And we worked with someone in a very similar way. This person happened to be like, pretty specific to the gym space, which made sense.
Yeah.
And it was like, just like you said, it wasn't like about feelings or anything like that. It was like, here's how you run Facebook ads. Here's how you should put your sales scripts together. Here's how you take front end money and turn that into more marketing money so you can fill your facility.
Did you work with Alex Hormozi?
We did. We worked with Alex Hormozi.
I don't know how it took me this long to connect those dots, but yes, I love his book, $1 Million Offers. I think it's amazing.
We worked with him before, he's kind of like transitioned. He's become like a very big personality.
Yeah.
We really worked with him when he was probably one of the top 2 or 3 guys in the gym space, but was not known otherwise. But he knows what he's saying. He does. It's not like he doesn't get on Instagram and tell you things that he doesn't do or doesn't believe, which is probably why he's so popular right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it made a big difference for us because we just we knew how to open a gym and have people train and make sure they had a good time, and we didn't know how to do anything else. Help them get
stronger.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing is that so many of my clients, their like biggest surprise is how much time they have to spend marketing, right? Because they're like, I'm just gonna, do what I'm really good at, and people are just gonna want it, you know. And it's not ignorance; it's just like this. When you are marketed to, you actually don't realize how much time gets invested in that. And I spend probably 70 to 80% of my working time marketing, whether it's writing newsletters, social content, podcasts, all that. And that is a lot of time.
Yeah, sure. 70 to 80% of your time. Yeah. For us, the thing that we really needed to learn how to do was sales, just the nature of our business. Yeah. So we needed to learn how to talk to people, and what we do is not very easily explained, or it's not kind of typical. It's not like you go to Equinox and it's like, well, our tiles and towels are nicer than that gym's tiles and towels, so come here. This is like we train in small groups, and it's progressive training, and it changes every 4 weeks, and people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. So like learning how to like kind of package the message and speak to people and get them excited about training, and then just to have more people to speak to, it sounds like very kind of common sense now, but like at the time we were like, oh yeah, we need to do that. We were just like, well, people will show up. We'll do cool stuff and people will just come, and that does not happen.
It does not happen. I know the whole like if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
He will come or whatever.
We firmly believe that.
Yeah. Right. And you want to believe that, right? Like we want to believe that there's some level of just a well-informed audience choosing what's best for them, right? You're like, all these people in New York are working out and want to get strong. Like, why would they not come here?
Right.
It actually logically doesn't make any sense. And the problem is that there is no logic.
Right. Well, yeah, right. Either they don't know.
Yeah.
Or, and a lot of times it's like, even if they do know, it's like, well, that seems too hard, so I'm not doing that. Like that's also.
There's that. There's, obviously, I mean, I think you guys I feel like I'm paying a fair amount, but there's obviously like it costs more than Equinox to work out here.
Sure.
And I think that's just, I think about the sales conversations a lot, right? And like objections around pricing and all that. And pricing is always interesting to me because I think it's rare that people are really concerned about the pricing. Do you know what I mean? I think it's like, I always say this to people. I'm like, if I could guarantee you that after 4 weeks of working together, you would make $250,000, let's call it that, right? You would have no doubt about the price. So it's the lack of certainty that's actually creating the anxiety, not so much the price.
Right.
But just, I'm big about defining things and just being clear about like what's driving your decisions, because that's what you need to do when you run a business.
Yeah.
So if you're going to make a decision to invest in your business, you want to get clear about it. And so I think that is always interesting, right? It's like, if you had that certainty, right, the anxiety wouldn't be there, right? If you were certain that you were going to be able to meet whatever fitness goals you had, I don't think that so many people would be like, but it's more expensive than Equinox.
Right. But that's a difficult thing to prove. And it's not even, it's like, it's how big is the chasm between like the price and the pain that they're feeling.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. Like that, when we started with Hormozy, like we spoke to them, they told us the price, we could not afford it.
Yeah.
And we were like, here's our credit card.
Yeah.
Because we were like, we have to do something.
Yeah.
Like we're just stuck.
Yeah.
Right. It was just like, we do not have this money.
Yeah.
But we're going to believe that what you're telling us is true.
Right.
You know?
And sometimes you have to take that leap of faith, and you can be wrong about it. And that's doesn't necessarily mean that it was like a huge fuck up, right?
Yeah.
Like I think I'm glad that you weren't, but
yeah,
I think that there's, this is kind of a related example, but I signed my son up for swim classes, and he was doing private classes at the Y, and I was like, he's in the water. He's like theoretically swimming, but he's not learning to swim, right? And I had chosen the Y because it was, of the private classes in New York City, less expensive. And then my friend told me about someone who was double the price, right? And I was like, they're like, she's amazing. Like my kids are swimming in a way I never thought they could. And like, it's important to me for my kids to swim because we go to Italy and like, and I just have anxiety about kids around water. So like the sooner they swim.
It's kind of reasonable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, well, because all these families are like, my kids need to learn how to ski. I'm like, my kids don't need to learn how to ski. They need to learn how to swim. Right. And anyways, so she was double the price, right? And I was just like, but now my kids have been swimming there, and my like 3.5-year-old in particular is like thriving. And we were in Miami, and he was just like jumping into the pool, and he felt comfortable. I felt more comfortable. And I was like, if I'd gotten this price first, I would have been shocked. But I threw a bunch of money down the drain, right? In terms of the actual goal, right? The actual outcome.
Right.
So anyways, I always think it's kind of interesting how we relate to all that, but it's ultimately just about trade-offs, right? Like, what are you willing to not even sacrifice, right? But like everything comes at the cost of something.
Yeah. I mean, for us, our original kind of marketing scheme was
strategy.
Yeah.
Scheme sounds shady AF.
Right. Our original thought was, because Kyle and I came from one-on-one personal training, and we were like, we can deliver as good of a product as one-on-one personal training with 4 people for a third of the price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you're coming from paying $170 an hour, and then you come to us, it's like, this is a bargain.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's like
right.
So
if
relative.
you're used to paying $22 for class pass, well, now this seems expensive. So, but yes, I think the people who come and stay, if they're getting the results and they have a good experience, it's like, it's a hard thing to walk away from.
Yeah.
But that would be with anything.
Yeah. But I think one of the things that I resisted the most, and that I've leaned into more and more, is this idea that you need to learn how to sell effectively, because like, even for me, like as I started, I was just like, I know the strategy. I know that there's like better sales, worse sales, but like I'd had so many slimy conversations with people, and I was so terrified of being that person, right? Mm-hmm. Like the snake oil, whatever salesperson. And so it took me some time to start to lean into it. And I actually started working with a sales coach this year, and she's great. And she really has challenged me to think about the opportunities. And recently what I've noticed is I've been on calls with people, and because I've kind of let go of that like slimy whatever fear, I'm like talking to people. I'm just like excited to help them, because I'm like, I've moved away from this feeling of like, I need to like close a sale, or I need to like make an offer or whatever. And now I'm just like, oh my God, I can help you. You are struggling, and I can help you with your struggle in such a real way.
Exact same thing. I feel like I'm really good at selling the gym. Like, we're really good. Kyle and I are like really good at it. I don't think I would be a good salesperson otherwise.
Yeah.
I don't even feel like it's sales calls. I feel like I'm just talking to you about our gym, and maybe you'd be interested in it.
Right.
And I do feel like we could help people, which is, an exciting thing.
Yeah.
It also helps when you're in a position of maybe you don't need to add more clients.
Right.
But like you have room for a few more good ones.
Yeah.
So it's like, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit.
Totally. But I feel like I have always tried, and I realize this is my privilege, right? But I've always tried to come with that approach, because like there have been a couple times where I've just like been like, had a bad feeling, and then either way just been like, okay, we'll figure it out, it'll be fine. And it was not fine.
Right. Some people are just not right for you.
Some people are just not right for you. Some people want, like, especially in the way that I work, I'm like a little bit more on the like philosophical side than on the purely like spreadsheets and standard operating procedures. Like I know all that stuff, but that's not the stuff that excites me. What excites me is like getting into it and like figuring out like what the root cause issue is and how do we solve it. And that comes out of conversation and dialogue. And sometimes people just want like the framework. And I'm like, well,
right.
I don't think that there's one size fits all answers. So I'm not just going to be here offering like rinse and repeat business strategies, because it's different for everyone. So our opportunity is to define what that is and what that looks like. And it's all yours. And how cool is that?
Right. Are you still like a one-person shop, or do you have other people working with you?
So it's funny. I actually posted something about this on Instagram, because I'm like, no one is a solopreneur, even if they think they are,
Right.
unless they're like living in the woods. I'm like, I have a full-time nanny. She is essential to my business, even though she is certainly not a business employee, because that's legal.
Yeah, but you couldn't do it otherwise.
But I couldn't do it otherwise. My husband is a chef, so he makes food at work and brings food home. But on top of that, now, yes, I have an online business manager. I have a virtual assistant. So I have two they're both part-time, but two key support people. And then I like subcontract other like contractors sometimes. So copywriters are big ones. I just did a website redesign, so I outsourced that, obviously.
Sure.
That was an interesting one where it was a big investment. And at the time, anyone would have been like, this is a crazy amount of money for you to be spending on a website. And I was like, yeah, but I want a good website. And my goal is that by the time this website comes out, which I knew was going to be like 10 months later because she couldn't start right away, I want to be the person that it's like a completely justified expense for, right? Like I want to be making enough money 10 months from now that people are like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it was a little bit of that magical thinking where I was like, I'm going to take that risk. I'm going to assume that I will get there. Right.
Well, yeah, I think like that's a kind of an underappreciated thing too, which is, with the way that we've run our business and things like hiring a guy like Hormozy, or even how we just, how we get our kind of client loyalty and accountability is like, you have to have skin in the game, and it's got to be kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like for us, the amount of money we paid him was uncomfortable. For a lot of people, the amount of money they have to pay each week to come to training is like slightly uncomfortable. That does help drive the result.
Right.
Because if it's like, if it's that Spotify thing where you're like, I don't need to cancel it, it's only $12.
Yeah.
You don't care if you go or not. It has to feel a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. It has to push you. Yeah. And I think that it's like the discomfort is important. But there's also, I think, how do I put this? I think it's just redefining the opportunity, right? Yeah. And thinking about where am I now and where do I really want to be, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not into manifesting.
I just saw that on your Instagram. Yeah, like
because I say fuck manifesting all the time. Yeah. Because I'm like, I don't want to sit around and stare at it. Like, no one's gonna build muscle by looking at like, having a picture cut out of someone strong on their vision board, right? Mm-hmm. They're gonna build it by coming into the gym, right? Yeah. No one's gonna grow their business by just like sitting around waiting for it to happen. You need to like take action and take the steps.
Right.
So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk about this forever, but you have to get down to Miami for your husband's new restaurant opening. What's the name of the restaurant?
Mamo. There's one in Soho.
Okay.
And then Miami is their second location.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, go to Mamo.
Thank you. I'm going to eat some pizza.
Yeah. And eat there. And if you need small business help, reach out to Frenchie. And if you need training, go uptown and train with the Upper East Side people and Frenchie there.
Yeah.
Because it'll be awesome, clearly.
Clearly.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Of course. Thank you.